Welcome to Jersey Reads the Classics, an audiobook podcast delving into the finest works of our literary masters. Unfortunately, it's read by this woman.
What the hell? Who cares? Let's go on an adventure.
Hello, and welcome back to Jersey Reads the Classics with me, your host, Rosa DeCandia. Well, my friends, welcome back. And you know what? I'm kind of dressed. Well, this is actually how I normally dress when it's chillier weather. And right now in LA, it's been sweltering. It's been like freaking hot. It's been like 90 degrees. Okay, enough about that. Anyway, I'm dressed like this because guess what's coming up this week? Hello, Halloween. So this is my ode to witchy poo kind of what's her name? Wednesday Addams kind of look. It's a hybrid. So it's witchy poo Wednesday Addams look. Anyway, besides that, as you know, we have completed the Grimm's fairy tales. Were the ones that I chose to read. But because it's Halloween at the end of this week, I figured I would do a Halloween classic. So the classic that everybody, I've seen movies and cartoons of it, but I have never read the book, is, of course, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. Now, I don't know how interesting this book is going to be, but I will try to make it as interesting as possible. And since I do 2 episodes a week, it's a novella. So I'm going to do one episode today, one half of the book, and the other half on Friday. And bada bing, bada boo, you got your Halloween special. So without any further ado, let's get on to The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. Hello. Found among the papers of the late Dietrich Knickerbocker. A pleasing land of drowsy-headed was, of dreams that were before the half-shut eye, and of gay castles in the clouds that pass, forever flushing round a summer sky. Castle of Indolence. I don't know if that's a little poem, but that's what was found amongst his little writings. Okay, you ready, people? Let's go. In the bosom of one of those spacious coves which indent the eastern shore of the Hudson, at that broad expansion of the river denominated by the ancient Dutch navigators the Tappan Zee, and where they always prudently shortened sail and implored the protection of St. Nicholas when they crossed, there lies a small market town or road port, which by some is called Greensburg, but which is more generally and properly known by the name of Tarrytown. This name was given, we are told, in former days by the good housewives of the adjacent country. Oh, it's like the rich housewives of Beverly Hills, so maybe it's the good housewives of the adjacent country, or maybe you could do the rich housewives of Tarrytown. From the inveterate propensity of their husbands to linger about the village tavern on market days. Oh, I get it, they tarry around the town. Also, you can tell there's going to be a lot of SAT words here, people. A lot of SAT words. Be that as it may, I do not vouch for the fact, but merely advert to it for the sake of being precise and authentic. I appreciate that because if he's going to tell a story, you better be authentic. Not far from this village, perhaps about 2 miles, there is a little valley, or rather lap of land among high hills, which is one of the quietest places in the whole world. A small brook glides through it with just murmur enough to lull one to repose, and the occasional whistle of a quail or tapping of a woodpecker is almost the only sound that ever breaks in upon the uniform tranquility. Well, sign me up for that. Looks like I need a nice little place to go and meditate and find my Zen spot, not to be confused with the G-spot. And I hope all you men or women out there know where the G-spot is. You know what I mean? That's an important spot to know. And it's like, golly gee, you better know. I recollect that when I was a youth, my first exploit in squirrel shooting was in a grove of tall walnut trees that shades one side of the valley. I had wandered into it at noontime, when all nature is peculiarly quiet, and was startled by the roar of my own gun as it broke the Sabbath stillness around and was prolonged and reverberated by the angry echoes. Oh, good Lord. You tell this is going to be verbose, people. Verbose. It's just like a lot of poetry. Okay, like it's long. If ever I should wish for a retreat whither I might steal from the world and its distractions, and dream quietly away the remnant of a troubled life, I know of none more promising than this little valley. From the listless repose of the place and the peculiar character of its inhabitants, who are descendants from the original Dutch settlers, this sequestered glen has long been known by the name of Sleepy Hollow, and its rustic lads are called the Sleepy Hollow Boys, throughout all the neighboring country. So it's like their gang is the Sleepy Hollow Boys. Hey, who did that? It's the Sleepy Hollow Boys. Oh shit, they be coming. Okay, you know what I'm saying? The Sleepy Hollow Boys. A drowsy, dreamy influence seems to hang over the land and to pervade the very atmosphere. Some say that the place was bewitched by a high German doctor during the early days of the settlement. Others, that an old Indian chief, the prophet or wizard of his tribe, held his powwows there before the country was discovered by Master Hendrik Hudson. I love it when they like to put in the white history books that it was discovered, like, you know, Columbus discovered America. No. This guy discovered this settlement. No. The people that were here were the Native Americans, and everybody else are immigrants. So even if you've been here, your family's been here 300 years, you're an immigrant. You're not native to this land. That's why you're not called a Native American. You're called an American. My parents are immigrants, so I'm Italian American. I'm first generation. So I know that. So let's check our history and just know that the only people that are indigenous are the indigenous people, the Native Americans. And then we won't get into the history of how, you know, the white man came, jumped on the land and killed everybody, and they did not break bread with everybody on Thanksgiving. I'm sorry to break that news to you, but you know what? I've got to tell the story the way the story's got to be told. All right, certain it is. The place still continues under the sway of some witching power that holds a spell over the minds of the good people. I put a spell on you. That holds a spell over the minds of the good people, causing them to walk in a continual reverie. I kind of like that. A continual reverie. Okay. They are given to all kinds of marvelous beliefs and are subject to trances and visions and frequently see strange sights and hear music and voices in the air. All right, well, that's hopefully in the air. They're not hearing voices in their head, okay? And if you do, I mean, you know, I'm not going to get on that. The whole neighborhood abounds with local tales, haunted spots, and twilight superstitions. Stars shoot and meteors glare oftener across the valley than in any other part of the country, and the nightmare, with a whole ninefold, seems to make it the favorite scene of her gambols. A lot to say. Oftener. We never use that word oftener anymore. There's a lot of words here we don't use, and I'll be honest with you. Get your thesaurus or get your dictionary out, okay? The dominant spirit, however, that haunts this enchanted region and seems to be commander-in-chief of all the powers of the air is the apparition of a figure on horseback without a head. It is said by some to be the ghost of a Hessian trooper whose head had been carried away by a cannonball in some nameless battle during the Revolutionary War, and who was ever and anon seen by the country folk hurrying along in the gloom of night as if on the wings of the wind. On the wings of love, open into the ghost. I don't remember the words, but I still love that song. His haunts are not confined to the valley, but extend at times to the adjacent roads, and especially to the vicinity of a church at no great distance. Indeed, certain of the most authentic historians of those parts who have been careful in collecting and collating the floating facts concerning the specter allege that the body of the trooper having been buried in the churchyard, the ghost rides forth to the scene of battle in nightly quest of his head, and that the rushing speed with which he sometimes passes along the hollow like a midnight blast is owing to his being belated and in a hurry to get back to the churchyard before daybreak. Because it's daybreak, and he's gotta go back to the churchyard, because he's a headless horseman, and let him ride all throughout the land. Did you see what I did there? And you know who that is? Barry Manilow, because you know I'm a fan of. Such is the general purport of this legendary superstition, which has furnished materials for many a wild story in that region of shadows. And the specter is known at all the country firesides by the name of the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. Doodaloo, doodaloo, doodaloo. It is remarkable that the visionary propensity I have mentioned is not confined to the native inhabitants of the valley, but is unconsciously imbibed by everyone who resides there for a time. However wide awake they may have been before they entered that sleepy region, they are sure in a little time to inhale the witching influence of the air. That means they're drinking the Kool-Aid and begin to grow imaginative, to dream dreams and see apparitions. Okay, so they go there, they don't know anything about this tale, and they don't really, they're kind of like, I don't believe in it, and all of a suddenly they drink the Kool-Aid, and then they're like, there's a headless horseman that's running around looking for his head. Looking for his head in all the wrong places, looking for his head in too many spaces. Oh, God. Oh, my God. It looks like I'm going to try to make this story a little bit more interesting because right now it's kind of, there's a lot of exposition and okay, it's the beginning of the book. So let's not put ourselves off to it yet. I mention this peaceful spot with all possible laud, for it is in such little retired Dutch valleys found here and there embosomed in the great state of New York, New York. And I'm from New Jersey. Hello, East Coast. That population, manners, and customs remain fixed, while the great torrent of migration and improvement, which is making such incessant changes in other parts of this restless country, sweeps by them unobserved. So it's like a little town that stays in their own little way. It doesn't change with the times and things that are happening. Okay, I see you, Sleepy Hollow. They are like those little nooks of still water which border a rapid stream, where we may see the straw and bubble riding quietly at anchor, or slowly revolving in their mimic harbor, undisturbed by the rush of the passing current. That's a lovely metaphor. It's a lot of shit to say, though. Good golly. There's like one or two commas there, and that was like that's a long-running, these are all long-running sentences. It's all I'm going to say. Though many years have elapsed since I trod the drowsy shades of Sleepy Hollow, yet I question whether I should not still find the same trees and the same families vegetating in its sheltered bosom. I like the word bosom. I think we've made it more sexual than it needs to be, but bosom, it's a nice word. It's like, I want to lay my head in your bosom because I need some concern. I'm concerned, I'm scared. In this byplace of nature there abode, in a remote period of American history, that is to say, some 30 years since, a worthy wight of the name of Ichabod Crane, who sojourned, or as he expressed it, tarried, in Sleepy Hollow, tarried, for the purpose of instructing the children of the vicinity. Oh, he's a schoolmaster. He was a native of Connecticut, a state which supplies the Union with pioneers for the mind as well as for the forest, and sends forth yearly its legions of frontier woodmen and country schoolmasters. The cognomen of Crane was not inapplicable to his person. He was tall, but exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms and legs, hands that dangled a mile out of his sleeves, feet that might have served for shovels, and his whole frame most loosely hung together. So he was a tall motherfucker. He could have played basketball. His head was small and flat at top, with huge ears, large green glassy eyes, and a long snipe nose, so that it looked like a weathercock perched upon his spindle neck to tell which way the wind blew. That's funny, which we're saying right now, FYI, Ichabod Crane, it doesn't sound like he's a looker. He might be tall, but he's nothing to look at. But that's not important. But the point is here, we're establishing he ain't cute. To see him striding along the profile of a hill on a windy day, with his clothes bagging and fluttering about him, one might have mistaken him for the genius of famine descending upon the earth, or some scarecrow eloped from a cornfield. Well, that's not a nice-looking, lovely metaphor. A famine descending upon the earth. That's what it looks like. Oh, my God. Poor Ichabod Crane. They're not painting him physically in a nice, but we're getting the picture. He's not cute. His schoolhouse was a low building of one large room, rudely constructed of logs, the windows partly glazed and partly patched with leaves of old copybooks. It was most ingeniously secured at vacant hours by a withe twisted in the handle of the door and stakes set against the window shutters, so that though a thief might get in with perfect ease, he would find some embarrassment in getting out, an idea most probably borrowed by the architect Jost van Houten, from the mystery of an eel pot. I like that. Jost Van Houten. Ha 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 ha. I sound very uppity duppity dippity. Jost Van Houten. Jost Van Houten. You know what I'm saying? Oof, not easy. The schoolhouse stood in a rather lonely but pleasant situation, just at the foot of a woody hill with a brook running close by and a formidable birch tree growing at one end of it. From hence, the low murmur of his pupils' voices conning over their lessons might be heard in a drowsy summer's day, like the hum of a beehive, interrupted now and then by the authoritative voice of the master in the tone of menace or command, or peradventure by the appalling sound of the birch as he urged some tardy loiterer along the flowery path of knowledge. Truth to say, he was a conscientious man, and ever bore in mind the golden maxim, spare the rod and spoil the child. Ichabod Crane's scholars certainly were not spoiled. Okay, Ichabod, so he's hitting them with the little birch tree branch if they're hanging out outside, right? And you remember in the old days, I didn't go to Catholic school, but didn't they say like the nuns would hit the kids with rulers on the hands? Thank God I didn't grow up. I mean, I'm 51. We never got hit in school. No. I would not have imagined it, however, that he was one of those cruel potentates of the school who joy in the smart of their subjects. On the contrary, he administered justice with discrimination rather than severity, taking the burden off the backs of the weak and laying it on those of the strong. Your mere puny stripling that winced at the least flourish of the rod was passed by with indulgence. That's not fair. He's discriminating. That's not good. But the claims of justice were satisfied by inflicting a double portion of some little tough, long-headed, broad-skirted Dutch urchin who sulked and swelled and grew dogged and sullen beneath the birch. So he didn't punish the kids that were small and weak and whatever and was like, no, don't hit me, don't hit me. He would punish the bigger kids doubly. I don't know if I agree with that. He's a conscientious man, but yet he's not very fair. Really, Ichabod? All this he called doing his duty by their parents, and he never inflicted a chastisement without following it by the assurance so consolatory to the smarting urchin that, quote, he would remember it and thank him for it the longest day he had to live, unquote. When school hours were over, he was even the companion and playmate of the larger boys, and on holiday afternoons would convoy some of the smaller ones home, who happened to have pretty sisters or good housewives for mothers, noted for the comforts of the cupboard. Also, Ichabod Crane wants a piece of the sister, or he wants to get fed really well because he's a tall, lanky ass and he needs food. You know, you burn more calories when you're tall. Yeah, your metabolism is faster. People say no, but it's true. Okay, indeed, it behooved him to keep on good terms with his pupils. The revenue arising from his school was small and would have been scarcely sufficient to furnish him with daily bread, for he was a huge feeder, and though lank, had the dilating powers of an anaconda. Had the dilating powers of, I like that. So he eats as much as an anaconda. But to help out his maintenance, he was, according to country custom in those parts, boarded and lodged at the houses of the farmers whose children he instructed. Oh, that's pretty interesting, huh? So he stayed at different people's houses. That's interesting. With these, he lived successively a week at a time, thus going the rounds of the neighborhood with all his worldly effects tied up in a cotton handkerchief. So he's doing the Marie Kondo thing, right? If it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it. He's got a handkerchief tied up with this shit. He's smart. He's being a minimalist, you know? In those days, people were like, they lived their lives, you know, with what they needed. And now we have so much opulence and crap that we get upset and we don't have that shit. So maybe the pendulum is swinging back where we find the little joys in life to be more fulfilling than all the crap that we think we should be doing. I know I'm going off on tangents. I'm so sorry. I'll stay to the story. That all this might not be too onerous on the purses of his rustic patrons, who were apt to consider the cost of schooling a grievous burden, and schoolmasters are mere drones, he had various ways of rendering himself both useful and agreeable. He assisted the farmers occasionally in the lighter labors of their farms, helped to make hay, mended the fences, took the horses to water, drove the cows from pasture, and cut wood for the winter fire. Okay, I like the fact that he's earning his keep. He laid aside, too, all the dominant dignity and absolute sway with which he lorded it in his little empire, the school, and became wonderfully gentle and ingratiating. He found favor in the eyes of the mothers by taking care of the children, particularly the youngest. And like the lion bold, which Willem so magnanimously the lamb did hold, he would sit with a child on one knee and rock a cradle with his foot for whole hours together. Sounds like Ichabod Crane is a good babysitter. So, like, they could go out on date night and go hit the lake and go make out, the parents, and Ichabod Crane could be like watching the kid and pushing the little cart. That's actually funny. All right, so Ichabod Crane doesn't sound that terrible. In addition to his other vocations, he was the singing master of the neighborhood and picked up many bright shillings by instructing the young folks in psalmody. It was a matter of no little vanity to him on Sundays to take his station in front of the church gallery with a band of chosen singers where, in his own mind, he completely carried away the palm from the parson. Certain it is, his voice resounded far above all the rest of the congregation, and there are peculiar quavers still to be heard in that church, and which may even be heard a half-mile off, quite to the opposite side of the mill pond on a still Sunday morning, which are said to be legitimately descended from the nose of Ichabod Crane. Thus, by divers little makeshifts, in that ingenious way which is commonly denominated by hook and by crook, the worthy pedagogue got on tolerably enough, and was thought by all who understood nothing of the labor of headwork to have a wonderfully easy life of it. Okay, so they're thinking he's got an easy life, but don't understand being a schoolmaster is not easy, and he's got to deal with all the little, the little Dutch urchins in the school and have to, discipline them. But I digress. We don't thank our teachers enough, and especially now I think people are realizing how important teachers are. They are very underpaid. They should be paid more. And also, imagine 25 of your children. Imagine having 25 children in your house at once in one room that you have to contain, you have to teach, you have to keep their attention. That's all I ask. Now, you do that. Now, you think about what they make and how much an hour, and they don't just stop at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when your kids go home. They're planning lessons, they're creating things, they're doing shit all the time. They're preparing all the time. So teachers, thank you very much for shaping the future minds of our children. And I hope one day you get the money you deserve. That's all I'm going to say on that. Here we go. These are PSAs. All right. The schoolmaster is generally a man of some importance in the female circle of a rural neighborhood, being considered a kind of idle, gentlemanlike personage of vastly superior taste and accomplishments to the rough country swains, and indeed inferior in learning only to the parson. His appearance, therefore, is apt to occasion some little stir at the tea table of a farmhouse, or a little stir somewhere else, just because he's a schoolmaster, but he ain't nothing to look at. All right, it's his mind. They fall in love with his mind. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have a crush on Albert Einstein. Man wasn't nothing to look at, but he's brilliant. Was. And the addition of a supernumerary dish of cakes or sweetmeats, or, peradventure, the parade of a silver teapot. Look at them cracking out the silver for Ichabod Crane. Okay, he may not be a handsome man, but he's got everybody, shaking in their shoes, quivering in their little skirts. Our man of letters, therefore, was peculiarly happy in the smiles of all the country damsels. How he would figure among them in the churchyard between services on Sundays, gathering grapes for them from the wild vines that overran the surrounding trees, reciting for their amusement all the epitaphs on the tombstones, or sauntering with a whole bevy of them along the banks of the adjacent mill pond, while the more bashful country bumpkins hung sheepishly back, envying his superior elegance and address. From his half-itinerant life, also, he was a kind of traveling gazette, carrying the whole budget of local gossip from house to house, so that his appearance was always greeted with satisfaction. I like it. So he's like the news, and he's going to tell you bizwax. So don't be yelling, don't be doing things like you shouldn't be doing in front of Ichabod Crane, because another family is going to find out all your shit, all your dirty laundry. He's going to air out the dirty laundry. He was, moreover, esteemed by the women as a man of great erudition, for he had read several books quite through, and was a perfect master of Cotton Mather's History of New England Witchcraft, in which, by the way, he most firmly and potently believed. Okay, he likes witchcraft. It seems like Ichabod Crane is not only a man, but he's like in touch with his feminine side, because he's reading about witchcraft, he's singing, he's taking care of the kids, he seems like an amiable man. So he's got the nice balance of the masculine and feminine energy. I see you, Ichabod Crane. So noted. He was, in fact, an odd mixture of small shrewdness and simple credulity. I think it's credulity. Credulity? I'll say, you know what? He was, in fact, an odd mixture of small shrewdness and simple credulity. I'm saying it both ways, and I'm not editing that shit out. His appetite for the marvelous and his powers of digesting it were equally extraordinary, and both had been increased by his residence in this spellbound region. No tale was too gross or monstrous for his capacious swallow. It was often his delight, after his school was dismissed in the afternoon, to stretch himself on the rich bed of clover bordering the little brook that winkled by his schoolhouse, and there con over Mather's direful tales until the gathering dusk of evening made the printed page a mere mist before his eyes. I get misty. Isn't that interesting? It's very poetic. I will say this. There's lovely prose in this. Very poetic. Okay, oof. It's early for me. I'm taping this early, so obviously, oika vault. All right. Then, as he wended his way by swamp and stream and awful woodland to the farmhouse where he happened to be quartered, every sound of nature at that witching hour flooded his excited imagination. The moan of the whippoorwill from the hillside, the boding cry of the tree toad, that harbinger of the storm, the dreary hooting of the screech owl, or the sudden rustling in the thicket of birds frightened from their roost. The fireflies, too, which sparkled most vividly in the darkest places, now and then startled him, as one of the uncommon brightness would stream across his path, and if, by chance, a huge blockhead of a beetle came winging his blundering flight against him, the poor valet was ready to give up the ghost with the idea that he was struck with a witch's token. Damn! That's, it ever happens to you? You watch a scary movie, you watch like those forensics, or you watch like those true crime things before bed, and then suddenly you can't sleep because you're just like running this shit through your mind, and you're like, oh my God, is there a killer in the closet? Is there a killer in an attic? Is someone coming in? Is there a ghost under the bed? Is paranormal activity happening? I mean, my favorite genre is horror. I actually get adrenaline from it. It's a genetic thing that, like my mom likes horror too, and it's actually genetic. Like there are some people like myself that actually need to watch horror films. Like we love it. Not that you need to, but you love watching it, so I can watch it any time of the day. I have a lot of I love Poltergeist, the original. I love Exorcist. I might have mentioned this before, but I love to be scared. Hellraiser 1 and 2. The rest I don't really particularly like, but I do love horror. I'm not gonna lie. I love my horror shows. Okay. His only resource on such occasions, either to drown thought or drive away evil spirits, was to sing psalm tunes, and the good people of Sleepy Hollow, as they sat by their doors of an evening, were often filled with awe at hearing his nasal melody, in linked sweetness long drawn out, floating from the distant hill, or along the dusky road. So, he's keeping his mind off of all the scary sounds. It's like counting sheep. Well, it's also like, having daydreams when you go to bed to not think about the bad things that you think are happening. Another of his sources of fearful pleasure was to pass long winter evenings with the old Dutch wives as they sat spinning by the fire with a row of apples roasting and spluttering along the hearth, and listened to their marvelous tales of ghosts and goblins and haunted fields and haunted brooks and haunted bridges and haunted houses, and particularly of the Headless Horseman, or Galloping Hessian of the Hollow, as they sometimes called him. Oh, this is hysterical. He's like Andy Cohen of the Rich Housewives of, the Rich Housewives series. He sits down with them, he gossips, he listens to the ghost stories and such. So he's Andy Cohen. Today on the Scary Housewives of Sleepy Hollow, okay, he would delight them equally by his anecdotes of witchcraft and of the direful omens and portentous sights and sounds in the air which prevailed in the earlier times of Connecticut, and would frighten them woefully with speculations upon comets and shooting stars, and with the alarming fact that the world did absolutely turn round, and that they were half the time topsy-turvy. But If there was a pleasure in all this, while snugly cuddling in the chimney corner of a chamber that was all of a ruddy glow from the crackling wood fire, and where, of course, no spectre dared to show his face, it was dearly purchased by the terrors of his subsequent walk homewards. Oh shit, what we were just talking about. Now he's gonna go through all those ghost stories. What fearful shapes and shadows beset his path amidst the dim and ghastly glare of a snowy night? With what wistful look did he eye every trembling ray of light streaming across the waste fields from some distant window? How often was he appalled by some shrub covered with snow which, like a sheeted spectre, beset his very path? How often did he shrink with curdling awe at the sound of his own steps on the frosty crust beneath his feet, and dread to look over his shoulder, lest he should behold some uncouth being tramping close behind him? And how often was he thrown into complete dismay by some rushing blast howling above the trees, and the idea that it was the Galloping Hessian on one of his nightly scourings. Dun 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 dun, the Galloping Hessian. It's like the Galloping Gourmet. There used to be a show from England, I think. The Galloping Gourmet, the Galloping Hessian. All these, however, were mere terrors of the night, phantoms of the mind that walk in darkness, and though he had seen many spectres in his time, and been more than once beset by Satan in divers shapes in his lonely perambulations, yet daylight put an end to all these evils, and he would have passed a pleasant life of it, in despite of the devil and all his works, if his path had not been crossed by a being that causes more perplexity to mortal man than ghosts, goblins, and the whole race of witches put together, and that was, dun 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 dun, a woman. Yes, we can be very vexing. We know that, and we like it. Yes, we've been taught to like it. Even if we didn't want to, we've had to learn how to use that. Among the musical disciples who assembled one evening in each week to receive his instructions in psalmody was Katrina Van Tassel, the daughter and only child of a substantial Dutch farmer. She was a blooming lass, a fresh 18, plump as a partridge, ripe and melting and rosy-cheeked as one of her father's peaches, and universally famed not merely for her beauty, but her vast expectations. And there ain't nothing wrong with having expectations. Do not settle in life. What is the point, my friends? You know what? People settle in relationships, jobs, all this shit. You don't need to settle. Think big, dream big, and go out and work for it. She was withal a little of a coquette, as might be perceived even in her dress, which was a mixture of ancient and modern fashions, as most suited to set off her charms. I wonder what charms they're talking about. You know what I mean? Usually it's the bosom. The bosom. She wore the ornaments of pure yellow gold, which her great-great-grandmother had brought over from Sardam. I think Sardam, Saardan, must be a town, wherever. I don't know, Norway, who knows? The tempting stomach of the olden time, and withal a provokingly short petticoat to display the prettiest foot and ankle in the country round. Okay, so it's all about the ankle and the foot. Ichabod Crane had a soft and foolish heart towards the sex, and it is not to be wondered at that so tempting a morsel soon found favor in his eyes, more especially after he visited her in her paternal mansion. Okay, so Ichabod Crane, who's nothing to look at, who has just a handkerchief full of belongings, who lives on other people because he's a schoolmaster, that's how he gets paid, whatever, is hot for a nice, hottie little Katrina Van Tassel, who also is wealthy. So Ichabod, not saying you're shooting out of your league, but you know what? Stop it. You're definitely shooting out of your league. I've been saying it. You know, it's like recently I was on Hinge. I did it for a month, that app, for 4 weeks. And let me tell you something. You men have some ego. You guys, I gotta be honest, the men that were hitting on me, I was like, really? If we're gonna be based off pictures, and I know it shouldn't be that, but that's why I don't like these apps. Because at the end of the day, you can't tell someone's energy. And then they start to like your picture, you start having a conversation, and they ghost you and they never talk to you again. It was a waste of my time. 4 weeks of Hinge. I'm unhinged from Hinge. Where was I? Okay. Old Baltus Van Tassel was a perfect picture of a thriving, contented, liberal-hearted farmer. He seldom, it is true, set either his eyes or his thoughts beyond the boundaries of his own farm, but within those everything was snug, happy, and well-conditioned. He was satisfied with his wealth, but not proud of it, and piqued himself upon the hearty abundance rather than the style in which he lived. You see, he was content and he was grateful. His stronghold was situated on the banks of the Hudson in one of those green, sheltered, fertile nooks in which the Dutch farmers are so fond of nestling. A great elm tree spread its broad branches over it, at the foot of which bubbled up a spring of the softest and sweetest water in a little well formed of a barrel, and then stole sparkling away through the grass to a neighboring brook that babbled along among alders and dwarf willows. There's a lot of description going on here. Hard by the farmhouse was a vast barn that might have served for a church, every window and crevice of which seemed bursting forth with the treasures of the farm. The flail was busily resounding within it from morning to night. Swallows and martins seemed twittering about the eaves, and rows of pigeons, some with one eye turned up as if watching the weather, some with their heads under their wings or buried in their bosoms, and others swelling and cooing and bowing about their teams, enjoying the sunshine on the roof. Okay, so he's got lots of birds. Here we go. We're going to talk about the farm. Sleek, unwieldy porkers were planting in the reapholes, an abundance of their pens, from whence sallied forth, now and then, troops of sucking pigs, as if to snuff the air. A stately squadron of snowy geese were riding in an adjoining pond, convoying whole fleets of ducks. Regiments of turkeys were gobbling through the farmyard, and guinea fowls fretting about it, like ill-tempered housewives with their peevish, discontented cries. Oi! Before the barn door strutted the gallant cock, that pattern of a husband, a warrior, and a fine gentleman, clapping his burnished wings and crowing in the pride and gladness of his heart, sometimes tearing up the earth with his feet, and then generously calling his ever-hungry family of wives and children to enjoy the rich morsel which he had discovered. Okay, so he's got a lot of animals on his damn farm. The pedagogue's mouth watered as he looked upon this sumptuous promise of a luxurious winter fare. In his devouring mind's eye, he pictured to himself every roasting pig running about with a pudding in his belly and an apple in his mouth. The pigeons were snugly put to bed in a comfortable pie and tucked in with a coverlet of crust. The geese were swimming in their own gravy, and the ducks pairing cozily in dishes, like snug married couples with a decent competency of onion sauce. In the porkers he saw carved out the future sleek side of bacon and juicy relishing ham. Not a turkey, but he beheld daintily trussed up with its gizzard under its wing, and peradventure, they say peradventure a lot, a necklace of savory sausages, and even bright Chanticleer himself lay sprawling on his back in a side dish with uplifted claws, as if craving that quarter which his chivalrous spirit disdained to ask while living. Oh my God. I mean, I don't eat poultry. I don't eat, chicken meat or pork. So this might sound good to a lot of people, but not to me. As the enraptured Ichabod fancied all this, and as he rolled his great green eyes over the fat meadowlands, the rich fields of wheat, of rye, of buckwheat and Indian corn, and the orchards burdened with ruddy fruit which surrounded the warm tenement of Van Tassel, his heart yearned after the damsel who was to inherit these domains, and his imagination expanded with the idea how they might be readily turned into cash, and the money invested in immense tracts of wild land and shingle palaces in the wilderness. Oh my God. He's already thinking what he could do with all this money. I mean, with Katrina Van Tassel, we've discovered that she's plump and all this other, and she's beauty, but he is loving on all her money. Do you see that? He's pulling like what women do. Like, we like to daydream. Like, we see a hot guy and we think about, I'm going to marry him. He's going to be my husband. We're going to have kids. I don't think about the kids thing. That's past. It's not an idea. It's not a thing for me. But I was going to marry Larry David. He just got married. So congratulations, Larry David, on your recent nuptials. Congrats to you and your wife. But it's I had my whole life planned out with Larry David. It didn't happen. All right, well, I don't know who I'm marrying if I'm marrying. But the point is, Ichabod Crane's doing what we all do. Don't we all daydream? I like daydreaming. I think it's healthy for us. Better to think good thoughts, my friend, than the negative ones. Nay, his busy fancy already realized his hopes and presented to him the blooming Katrina, with a whole family of children, mounted on top of a wagon loaded with household trumpery, with pots and kettles dangling beneath, and he held himself bestriding a pacing mare, with a colt at her heels, setting out for Kentucky, Tennessee, or the Lord knows where. He's a-moving on up to the Kentucky or Tennessee. When he entered the house, the conquest of his heart was complete. It was one of those spacious farmhouses. Oh, here we go again. We're going to get the description of the house. With high-ridged but lowly sloping roofs, built in the style handed down from the first Dutch settlers. The low projecting eaves forming a piazza along the front, capable of being closed up in bad weather. Under this were hung flails, harness, various utensils of husbandry, and nets for fishing in the neighboring river. Benches were built along the sides of summer use, and a great spinning wheel at one end and a churn at the other showed the various usage to which this important porch might be devoted. Good Lord. Basically, Katrina Van Tassel lives in a freaking great house. She's got a man, she's got a beautiful farm, she's gorgeous and all that, and she's just ripe for the picking. Ichabod thinks he's going to pick her. I don't think so. From this piazza, the wandering Ichabod entered the hall, which formed the center of the mansion and the place of usual residence. Here, rows of resplendent pewter ranged on a long dresser dazzled his eyes. In one corner stood a huge bag of wool ready to be spun. In another, a quantity of linsey woolsey just from the loom. Ears of Indian corn and strings of dried apples and peaches hung in gay festoons along the walls, mingled with the gourd of red peppers. And the door, left ajar, gave him a peep into the best parlor, where the claw-footed chairs and dark mahogany tables shone like mirrors, and irons, with their accompanying shovel and tongs, glistened from their covert of asparagus tops. Mock oranges and conch shells decorated the mantelpiece. Strings of various colored bird eggs were suspended above it. A great ostrich egg was hung from the center of the room, and a corner cupboard, knowingly left open, displayed immense treasures of old silver and well-mended china. Good Lord, this book, I gotta tell you, I am thinking, there's a lot of description going on here. There's a lot of description. So at this point, we thank God we haven't gotten like what Ichabod Crane's bowel movements are like. But at this point, we get it. The Van Tassels are very rich. Gewalt. We get it. I would have rather heard more about Katrina than the friggin' house and the land. That's all I'm saying. My God. From the moment Ichabod laid his eyes upon these regions of delight, the peace of his mind was at an end, and his only study was how to gain the affections of the peerless daughter of Van Tassel. In this enterprise, however, he had more real difficulties than generally fell to the lot of a knight-errant of yore, who seldom had anything but giants, enchanters, fiery dragons, and such like easily conquered adversaries to contend with, and had to make his way meanly through the gates of iron and brass and walls of adamant to the castle keep, where the lady of his heart was confined, all which he achieved as easily as a man would carve his way to the center of a Christmas pie. And then the lady gave him a hand as a matter of course. I gavolt. That is one long-ass sentence. I'm sorry, people, if you're still sticking with me. Kudos to you. Sorry, Washington Irving, I get it. This is the style of the time. Yes, poetic, but I gavolt the running on. I'm not a writer, so I don't know, but this is a Halloween classic. I'm hoping the second part is better, because right now it's feeling like a Charles Dickens novel. Oof. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was a short story, it was a long story. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Ichabod, on the contrary, had to win his way to the heart of a country coquette, beset with a labyrinth of whims and caprices, which were forever presenting new difficulties and impediments. And he had to encounter a host of fearful adversaries of real flesh and blood, the numerous rustic admirers who beset every portal to her heart, keeping a watchful and angry eye upon each other, but ready to fly out in the common cause against any new competitor. Da, 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 da. So he doesn't have to fight giants and tigers and bears, lions and tigers and bears to get her heart. He's got to fight real men. And I don't think fighting is his strongest suit. Among these, the most formidable was a burly, roaring, roistering blade of the name of Abraham, or according to the Dutch abbreviation, Bram van Brunt. The hero of the country round, which rang with his feats of strength and hardihood. He was broad-shouldered and double-jointed. With double-jointed, why do we need to know that? We do need to know that, ladies, don't we? Sorry, I'm getting there. With short, curly black hair and a bluff but not unpleasant countenance, having a mingled air of fun and arrogance. Oh, God, you know who he's reminding me of with the black hair? My true love, Captain Hook. Oh, I know Captain Hook was an evil man at the point, but he's got blue eyes and black hair. And Bram van Brunt might be the new Captain Hook. From his Herculean frame. Okay, yes, Hercules, and great powers of limb, he had received the nickname of Bram Bones, by which he was universally known. He was famed for great knowledge and skill in horsemanship, being as dexterous on horseback as a Tartar. I guess that's where his double-jointedness became useful. But I think it could be useful somewhere else. But we're not talking about that. Imagine if we did the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but it's like the Legend of Bram Bones in bed. You know how they do that when you go to a Chinese restaurant and they always say when you read, you get the little cookie, the fortune cookie, and you open it up and they say whatever read the fortune is, and then you add in bed. Ever do that? You know what? Now I implanted that in your head. If you've never did that, do that. That's all I'm going to say. If you've never done it, do it. Okay. I'll go both. He was foremost at all races and cockfights, and with the ascendancy which bodily strength always acquires in rustic life, was the umpire in all disputes, setting his hat on one side and giving his decisions with an air and tone that admitted of no gainsaying or appeal. He was always ready for either a fight or a frolic, kind of like Captain Hook, but had more mischief than ill will in his composition. All right. Yeah, we know Captain Hook did have a lot of ill will. I gotta get over that. And with all his overbearing roughness, there was a strong dash and waggish good humor at bottom. He had 3 or 4 boon companions who regarded him as their model, and at the head of whom he scoured the country, attending every scene of feud or merriment for miles round. In cold weather, he was distinguished by a fur cap surmounted with a flaunting fox's tail, and when the folks at a country gathering descried this well-known crest at a distance, whisking about among a squad of hard riders, they always stood by for a squall. Sometimes his crew would be heard dashing along past the farmhouses at midnight with whoop and halloo, like a troop of Don Cossacks, and the old dames, startled out of their sleep, would listen for a moment till the hurry-scurry had clattered by and then exclaim, "Aye, there goes Bram Bones and his gang." They were probably waiting for him to come in the middle of the night, get rid of the husband and take care of them. Bram Bones, you know what I'm saying? And I guess he hangs out with the Sleepy Hollow boys. God, where am I going with this? I think I'm trying to make this story a little bit more interesting than it is. Because at the moment, I'm underwhelmed at Washington Irving. I'm underwhelmed, completely underwhelmed. Are you? Please, if you are, write a comment. I'm trying to make it the best I can. Good gobble, that's all I have to say. Oy, oy. The neighbors looked upon him with a mixture of awe, admiration, and goodwill, and when any madcap prank or rustic brawl occurred in their vicinity, always shook their heads and warranted Bram Bones was at the bottom of it. This rantipole hero had for some time singled out the blooming Katrina for the object of his uncouth gallantries. Oh, I love that. The object of his uncouth gallantries. I love that word, uncouth. And though his amorous toyings was something like the gentle caresses and endearments of a bear, yet it was whispered that she did not altogether discourage his hopes. Okay, Katrina wants a piece of Bram Bones. She's boning for Bram Bones. Certain it is, his advances were signals for rival candidates to retire, who felt no inclination to cross a line in his amours, insomuch that when his horse was seen tied to Van Tassel's paling on a Sunday night, a sure sign that his master was courting, or as it is termed, sparking, within all other suitors passed by in despair and carried the war into other quarters. Okay, I like that. They know not to shit there. They're like, that's a cockfight. You know, they say, pissing contest. They're like, let's not deal with Bram Bones because, yeah, he's going to win. Such was the formidable rival with whom Ichabod Crane had to contend. And considering all things, A stouter man, he would have shrunk from the competition, and a wiser man would have despaired. He had, however, a happy mixture of pliability and perseverance in his nature. He was in form and spirit like a supplejack, yielding but tough. Though he bent, he never broke. And though he bowed beneath the slightest pressure, yet the moment it was away, jerk, he was as erect and carried his head as high as ever. Okay, so now we're getting a little bit of more of Ichabod Crane. So it seems to me he's resilient, he's persistent, and he's not going to let anybody like Brom Bones get his, spirit down. He's going to go for it, and he just don't give a fuck. And even though I'm not doing woo-woo with this week is no woo-woo, it says a lot about somebody. You know what? Slow and steady wins the race. He's not being deterred from Brom Bones. That's all I'm going to say. Even though Brom Bones is probably going to win. That's all I'm going to say, too. Katrina Van Tassel, she's 18. She ain't looking at you, Ichabod Crane. No matter how intelligent you are, you're bringing nothing to the plate. It's like, what are you bringing? You're not bringing looks. You're a schoolmaster, sure. Some singing, big deal. But then again, it's not like you're bringing money. She's doing it all. It's like, come on. You got to even the playing field. What are you giving her? I don't know. That's what I want to know. Your skills in bed? I don't know. In bed. There we go again. Don't forget to add that. To have taken the field openly against his rival would have been madness, for he was not a man to be thwarted in his amours any more than that stormy lover Achilles. Ichabod, therefore, made his advances in a quiet and gently insinuating manner. Be careful of those quiet ones, okay? Under cover of his character of singing master, he made frequent visits at the farmhouse. Not that he had anything to apprehend from the meddlesome interference of parents, which is so often a stumbling block in the path of lovers. Bold Van Tassel was an easy, indulgent soul. He loved his daughter better even than his pipe. Well, I'm glad she ranks over the pipe. And like a reasonable man and an excellent father, let her have her way in everything. His notable little wife. I love that. Notable little wife. She's just a little wife. She's the only one that gave birth to Katrina, right? That was the little wife. His notable little wife, too. I'm just going to say his notable wife, too, had enough to do to attend to her housekeeping and manage her poultry. For, as she sagely observed, ducks and geese are foolish things and must be looked after, but girls can take care of themselves. Yes, we can, and we have. Because you know what? As Rosie the Riveter says, we can do it. That's right. Look at RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. God rest your soul, wherever you are. Okay. Anyway, thus, while the busy dame bustled about the house or plied her spinning wheel at one end of the piazza, honest Balt would sit smoking his evening pipe at the other, watching the achievements of a little wooden warrior who, armed with a sword in each hand, was most valiantly fighting the wind on the pinnacle of the barn. It looks like Balt knows how to spend his nights, watching the wind vane, whatever you call that. In the meantime, Ichabod would carry on his suit with the daughter by the side of the spring under the great elm, or sauntering along in the twilight, that hour so favorable to the lover's eloquence. Look at him trying to slide in the back door. He's not even giving us singing lessons. He's going and walking around with her. I'm assuming he's got good conversation. But I digress, because at this point, Katrina Van Tassel's 18, Tassel. She can be awed by anything, but I don't think so. She wants a piece of that Brom Bones, because I want a piece of that Brom Bones. I profess not to know how women's hearts are wooed and won. To me, they have always been matters of riddle and admiration. Some seem to have but one vulnerable point or door of access, while others have 1,000 avenues and may be captured in 1,000 different ways. That's so true. Listen, gentlemen, I'm going to let you know something. You won't all think that we're just emotional beings. Yes, we are emotional, but we're also cerebral. We want you to be intelligent. We want you to challenge us. We want you to make us laugh. I mean, you don't have to be so handsome and everything, but you got to be also a nice person and treat us with respect. You know what I mean? And if you treat us like a queen, we will treat you like a king. Remember, treat others as you want to be treated. That's the simple thing. So I think, especially now with the whole dating world, I tried the Hinge, like I said. I don't date. It's just, I don't know what's going on today. I think there's too many distractions. Everybody wants more and more and more. It's the candy shop. It's like, oh, I had a piece of this Swedish fish. I'm over you. I'm going to have the next. I'm going to have the next. What the fuck, man? Totally different. In my days, it was not like this. So at this point, I'm like, you know what? I got bigger fish to fry. I don't need to date at the moment. But you know what, gentlemen? Just be nice people. And women, you be nice too. Because it works both ways. That's all I'm going to say. So let's go on. It is a great triumph of skill to gain the former, but a still greater proof of generalship to maintain possession of the latter, for man must battle for his fortress at every door and window. That's right, you gotta keep us. He who wins 1,000 common hearts is therefore entitled to some renown, but he who keeps undisputed sway over the heart of a coquette is indeed a hero. Certain it is, this was not the case with the redoubtable Brom Bones, and from the moment Ichabod Crane made his advances, the interest of the former evidently declined. His horse was no longer seen tied to the palings on Sunday nights, and a deadly feud gradually arose between him and the preceptor of Sleepy Hollow. All right, we're ending there because that's probably half the book. But I guess Ichabod is going down without a fight. He's not going down without a fight. That's what I mean. So Ichabod is, you know what, bitches? I'm stepping up to the plate. I want Katrina on my plate, plus all her guinea fowls, her turkeys, and all that crap. And I'm going to do what I need to do. And I'm not going to let Brom Handsome Bones, roguish Brom Bones, the rantipole hero, deter me from what I want. All right. So, my friends, I'm not doing any woo with this. I did go off on tangents because at this point, this is not the most interesting story. I'm sorry, it's not. Right now we're setting up, I get he's describing things in detail. Not saying it's not beautifully written, it's not anything like that. I know it was written at a different time, but obviously it's going to get better when we come across the legend and we face it, hopefully. So thank you for sticking with me if you stuck with me this whole time. And if you haven't, I totally get it. It means you're not watching this now anyway. But I digress. The point is this. Next week, at the end of this week, the next episode will be the exciting, I hope it's exciting, conclusion of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So until then, I hope you are staying healthy and sane and beautiful and loved and knowing you are loved and knowing you are worthy and enough. And my friends, until we read again.